Do you dare to follow me down? Head into the unknown, down the rabbit hole, where it stops, no one knows. We're going head into the unknown. Na, 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 na.
Hello, 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 everybody. Happy Thursday. Shit, it's Thursday, right? Yeah, that's what it is. Welcome back to Criminality, or if this is your first time here, welcome to Criminality. So we actually had a different, or I should say we, I don't know who the we is, me and my mouse in my pocket apparently, had a different Delphi Live planned for tonight, but then we got some new documents, or a new document that's pretty lengthy. So I was like, okay, I guess we're going to put that one off, and we'll do this one instead because it came out today. And so we're going to just take a gander at it and read through it for anybody who doesn't have the time to read it on their own and just wants to listen to somebody read it and then give my commentary about what I think of what I read. But first, let me say hi to you guys. And so maybe tomorrow we'll do the other Delphi Live that I had planned for today. But then there's some stuff that popped off in the Black Swan trial, and I was planning on doing the we were going to go back in time and do the Stand Your Ground hearing for Black Swan. So I got to kind of put that back now that there's new stuff coming out there too, with some a possible juror misconduct, and what might happen with that. So we're going to go back to the Black Swan for a hot minute. So I don't know how I'm going to play that all out. So tomorrow might be funky. Plus, we do have some fun stuff happening for the fundraising of the transcripts, which just an update. I still have not gotten a response from Jody on whether she's going to charge me the $1 per page for everything, or if she's going to charge me the $5.75 for everything outside of what the defense requested. So she still has not responded to me, and I've sent 2 follow-up emails, so we will see how that goes. Travis has also been working on finding the legal standing where we should be able to hopefully get the audio of hearings, and so we're working on that as well on the side. But we'll see how it goes. So today we're going to do this, but I'm going to say hi to you guys first, and then we will get started on the new documentation. I'm not going to babble for 15 minutes. I'll just do that throughout the entire live. So, there you go. Hi, Radar. What's up, Cleveland Rocks? The Banana Splits theme song. What's ducking? Ooh, we got ducking. Like rubber ducks? Rubber ducky, you're the one. Hi, the Royal We. What's up, Adrian? True Crime Fangirl. I like story time reading with T. I saw that you were first, by the way. Don't think I didn't notice. I saw it up there. Hi, Scott. I was jamming to the theme. I'm now in the present. Yes, I love when people read the docs. Hi, Jessica. Yes, I tried reading it myself and eyes crossed, so I love to just listen to you read to us. Hopefully nobody falls asleep when I read. What's up, Phoenix? Royal is the mouse in T's pocket. I see, Dub. Fiend, you ducking? Fiend, you ducking? Are you duck? What are you ducking? Hi, Susie Q. Happy retirement. Hi, Kaylee. What's up, Hansy Bay? What? I like that name. Hansy Bay. What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? Hi, FG16. Thank you, Teresa, for all your coverage and hard work. Although not a normal poster, always a listener. Well, I appreciate you being here regardless. And always feel free to chat, though. Oh, my goodness. What?
What are you doing?
I think it's pretty obvious.
You're not supposed to do that.
Why?
Because I'm supposed to come talk to you.
Oh, well, I don't have time. What do you need?
I have some more food.
Oh, my gosh. Go ahead. Have some more food.
What's going to eat?
These kids act like they never eat.
What time are you eating?
Probably 6:30.
And I'm going to eat.
You just got done eating.
No.
Why are you lying? Grab some popcorn. What's up, Just Deb? Hi, Sleuthy Goosey. What's up, Journey Takes a Trip? Freeze Dry It. Hi, Ramblin'. Have you posted an update on that case? I'm curious what, if anything, has come of that. Hi, Donnie. What's up, Yorkie? Let's get down here to the bottom. I think I read DB's comment, but I don't think I actually said hi to DB. Hi, not DB. What's up, Mar? Hi, Teresa. What's up, Bushi? What's up, Shibby Shibby? Shibby Shibby. Hi, Caitlin. What's up, Richard? Hey, Deets. Going back to listen to the intro. It's my favorite. Hi, Terry. Yay, my eyes. Thank you for reading this for us. Yeah, save your eyes. Oh, I never fall asleep with you. It always is a true crime podcast of sort. Oh, yeah, well, that's good to know. That's good to know. All right. Hi, Melly. Made it. I prefer when you laugh a lot uncontrollably. You're the best no matter what. I think we're gonna have to do some. I think when we do this the more fun live of the fundraising aspect of it, I think we'll be able to laugh a lot. Is T taking gold to court? What? Okay. All right. Let's get started. Let's get started. It's a bit of a lengthy thing, so. Let's get it up. Let's get it on. Let's get it on. Let's get ready to rumble. All full-time working moms should have to fend for yourself night, where you teach them cooking skills and recipes. I have been teaching my oldest to cook. See, I can't talk about that, though, because then I'm going to get all totally off track. But I have been teaching him to cook because I'm like, dude, when you're on your own, you at least know how to make some stuff, you know? He can microwave anything like a pro. Down to business because she's meaty. Yes. Yeah, the fundraiser prep is well underway, at least the games, which is I think what everybody's looking forward to there. Is this goals response? No, this is a memorandum. So let's start with that. So this is a memorandum filed by the defense team in addition to their request of allowing third party and essentially squashing Nick having the right in his motion in limine to say they cannot bring up these particular, people and Odinism and the ritualistic sacrifice and all of that stuff. So this is a memorandum filed from, I haven't got to the bottom of it yet because I was just kind of peeking it over, but from reading what I have, it seems like it's probably Jennifer Auger who wrote this one. That's just a guess. So maybe if you guys have already read to the end, you guys can tell me. But it just seems like it feels like her writing. So this is literally just for Judge Goal as a supplemental document in support of denying Nick's motion to keep all this out and why they believe, according to the law and according to the evidence that they want to present, why these particular third-party perpetrators should be allowed to come into the trial. So it's just in support of it. Ajay is a baddie. What's up, Yellow Jacket? Terry, did I say hi to you? I saw you up there. Hopefully I said hi to you and I wasn't doing something on the side. Lots of case law. Right. So, and it's truly what they have to do, because we talk about this a lot when we go over filings, is there's precedents that have already been set. There's precedents in your county, there's precedents in your state, there's precedents in federal courts. And so what the attorneys have to do is to show the court the legal precedent that's already happened, and they should be trying one in the county first, then the state, and then anything, you know, United States wide. It just says, hey, like, this is how we follow the law here, and this is what's already happened in prior cases. So it's part of the lawyer's responsibility on both sides to be showing the judge, like, hey, look, you can't just be turning over, you know, 50 years of case precedent and just making decisions all willy-nilly. You need to keep it going. Otherwise, if you start turning things over and making it so it's the opposite of that, cases in the future are going to come back to this one, and you could really screw things up because there's a reason that the law has already decided on certain things. And we also talk about when there's something new, and we more talk about this when it's like, I think one of the most recent examples is like the investigative genetic genealogy. And I think we kind of touched on it a bit yesterday with this whole change of the legality behind geofencing search warrants. What they're trying to do is create new case precedent saying, hey, this is or isn't okay. But with like the investigative genetic genealogy, nobody's trying to make it admissible in court. What they're trying to use it as a tip. And then the defense teams are trying to say, no, it should be admissible. We should get it as like our discovery. And, you know, there should be some Supreme Court rulings that state how and when it can be used in all cases. So I definitely won't give you a wrench to time out big fish. I like big fish. Sounds kind of weird. I like big fish. I like big fish and I cannot lie. Hi, Christine. What's up, Tammy? Let me see. Did I miss anybody else? Hopefully, if I missed you, hello. Thank you guys for being here. So this is literally a memorandum of law in support of admission of evidence of alternative theories of the crime and third-party perpetrators. So just the beginning is kind of all the shit that we already know, but I'll just kind of read through it pretty quick just so we kind of cover the whole thing. Don't laugh at my, don't be face slapping at my rapping skills. I just let it. Comes now Richard Allen by counsel and provides this memorandum of law in support of admission of evidence of alternative theories of the crime and third-party perpetrators. In the introduction, Mr. Allen has a constitutional right under the 6th and 14th Amendments of the United States Constitution and Article 1, Section 13 of the Indiana Constitution to present evidence attacking the credibility of the prosecution's case, undermining the believability of the prosecution's witnesses, identifying third-party suspects, and establishing Mr. Allen's theory of the case. We've talked about she can't just say, hey, you guys cannot bring up any of these people or any of your theory and just say you cannot have it in the courtroom. You can't do it because she would be violating his constitutional rights to have a defense that his defense team creates. Now, there are guidelines that they have to use to present why it's important, and we're going to see some of that here. Mr. Allen's theory of the case. Okay, the right is the cornerstone of the adversarial process and essential to a fundamentally fair trial, and denial of this right constitutes structural error, which is an appellate dream. I mean, it's just used once you have structural error, it's like, okay, let's just do the trial again. And then we go back to what the one attorney said at the Supreme Court of there would just be a trial, you know, for practice. Hey, Christy. You're like, I just came here for the rest. Somebody else said they were like stopped at page 7. Let me turn this off because you guys just see the side of my face. Oh shit, I'm still Judge Gull. Oh no. Hold on. Hold on. I gotta fix me. I gotta fix me and bring me back to reality. Back to life. Back to reality. Ah, that's so much better. Ah, scared me for a minute there. So whether rooted directly in the due process clause of the 14th Amendment or in the compulsory process or confrontation clauses of the Sixth Amendment, the Constitution guarantees criminal defendants a quote-unquote meaningful opportunity to present a complete defense. Crane versus Kentucky, I'm not going to read numbers, so you guys, if you want to look them up, by all means. This right is accomplished through the right to offer the testimony of witnesses and to compel their attendance at trial. So essentially, we have the right to subpoena people and prove our case. It is necessary for both the accused and the prosecution to present their versions of the facts to the jury so it may decide where the truth lies. And that's from Bizarre versus State. And then we have all the other case law that they're quoting. That's intentional. They're showing her like, hey, we looked all this up and this is the case precedent. Like this is why we're allowed to do it. Whether it be Indiana or other states, like I said, they look in Indiana first. Just as an accused has the right to confront the prosecution's witnesses for the purposes of challenging their testimony. So you guys have probably heard it, like you have the right to face your accuser. So if somebody, you have the right to be there looking at the person who's taking the stand and saying that they believe you did this or that or whatever. He has the right to present his own witnesses to establish a defense, and this right is a fundamental element of due process of law. When the prosecution seeks to prevent an accused the opportunity to present either versions or possibilities regarding the alleged crime, either through cross-examination or his own witnesses and exhibits, they are urging the trial court to commit not only an evidentiary error, but a constitutional error from which prejudice is presumed. That's Hernandez versus State. I feel like they've used Hernandez before. Holding that the burden switches to the state to rebut the presumption by showing that the error was harmless beyond a reasonable doubt. Similarly, exclusion of evidence tending to show that someone other than the accused committed the charged crime is inconsistent with substantial justice and therefore cannot be deemed a harmless error. Thus, the question becomes, what type of evidence is so critical and unique to Mr. Allen's defense that the U.S. and Indiana constitutions, above and beyond the Indiana rules of evidence, require its admission? The Indiana courts have answered that question by reversing cases when the excluded evidence challenged the credibility of the state's investigation and its witnesses, presented an alternative exculpatory explanation of the state's evidence, or showed that someone else could have committed the crime. So they're saying there's other cases where the quote-unquote third-party perpetrators was not allowed in, and immediately the case is reversed, and it's like, hey, no, you have the right to challenge the credibility of... Well, that would be interesting. That would be interesting, DB. You have the right to challenge all of the investigation, the witnesses, and all of the evidence that the prosecutor is bringing forward. You have the right to bring these types of things up and say, hey, this is what type of investigation you did. Well, what about, you feel like you did a thorough job and all of these things, but what about these other people? Did you follow up here? What about these search warrants? Did you serve them? How did that go? At the hearing on the prosecution's motion in limine, Mr. Allen presented evidence that the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German have ties to Odinism and were ritualistic. Mr. Allen also presented evidence that third parties are linked to the murders. The prosecution seeks to exclude evidence of third-party motive that is not relevant and or the probative value is outweighed by unfair prejudice, confusion of the issues, or has the potential to mislead the jury in violation of Rule 401. The prosecution further requests an order to exclude testimony or evidence concerning Odinism, cult and ritualistic killing, Brad Holder, Patrick Westfall, Johnny Messer, Elvis Fields, Ned Smith, Rod Abrams, Keegan Klein, Jerry Anthony Klein, and Ron Logan. The prosecution's requests seek to limit Mr. Allen's ability to present a defense, and if granted, would violate Mr. Allen's rights pursuant to the 6th and 14th Amendments of the United States Constitution and Article 1, Section 12 and 13 of the Indiana Constitution, to confront and cross-examine witnesses and to present his defense. Hi, ATS. So Mr. Allen is entitled to present evidence pursuant to the 6th and 14th Amendments in the United States Constitution, and we already read through all that. And so Indiana Constitution, that crime has elements of odinism and ritualistic killings. Essentially, what they're saying is that the prosecution went down this rabbit hole. They went down this rabbit hole, and they never finished it. They never figured it out. They never continued with it. They essentially just stopped and said, hey, this is it. And according to testimony that we've heard so far in the transcripts and from the hearings, is Brett Holder had an alibi. He was at work. We have his time card. And they stopped everything to do with anything from what we know as the public. Now, did they or did they not? That's going to be on them to show. But they're saying, hey, the prosecution's saying, hey, don't talk about it. We don't want it even brought up because it's going to confuse the jury. It's going to confuse the jury, and we don't want the jury confused. We want them to just focus on the information having to do with Richard Allen. And the defense is like, whoa, wait a minute. You don't want us to be able to cross-examine your witnesses about the lack of investigation that they actually didn't follow through with. Hey, Necessary Evil. Hey, Digital. That they didn't follow through with, number one. And number two, that you guys yourselves, the investigators, went down the rabbit hole of odinism and what you did to deem it not relevant to this case. That's a huge deal because we've gone over this so many times on this channel, and I think every channel, but the defense team didn't make up odinism. They didn't make up these third-party suspects. They didn't just pull them out of a hat and say, hey, this one looks kind of nice. Let's just go with this. What they actually took, what the investigation was leading to, even according to the deposition of the FBI agents, that this is what they were looking at to begin with. They were even looking in Ron Logan's house for any books tied to any type of paganism, anything like that. So this was their rabbit hole, not the defense's. So they're saying, the defense is like, the prosecutor's trying to keep us from talking about their own investigation. Why would the prosecution not want us to be able to bring up what they have done? And if they followed through and finished it, what would be the big deal? Now, if they did follow through and finish it, and here's all the evidence that supports none of these people are involved besides, just Brad Holder's time card, especially if we don't have a time of death, then they should be able to present that to the defense as part of discovery, and then they can prove it to the judge, which they had the opportunity to in their hearing for the motion in limine, to say, hey, here's everything we did to finish that investigation. And they chose not to do that. Yeah, yes, the state wants the defense to not be allowed to use the state's own PowerPoints. They're like, those are not important. You didn't have that one on your bingo card? That's okay, Yellow Giant. You still got bingo. All right, so let's see where we were. Demand the jury hear all versions. Okay. The 6th and 14th Amendments of the United States Constitution demand the jury hear all versions and possibilities regarding this alleged crime. In Moore versus State, holding it was a constitutional violation to prohibit the defendant from introducing suicide note near a body and allowing the state to introduce death certificates stating homicide. Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. So that case in particular, this Moore versus State, the defense was prohibited from introducing a suicide note, but the state was allowed to introduce one stating it was homicide. That's interesting. The state cannot take advantage of the inculpatory conclusion, but prohibit the defendant from placing the exculpatory conclusion before the jury. So it's like, we only want the jury to hear anything that points to Richard Allen. We don't want the jury to hear anything that points to anybody else. So the state cannot take advantage of the inculpatory conclusion, but prohibit the defendant from placing the exculpatory conclusion before the jury. And Turney versus State states, holding otherwise inadmissible evidence that third party previously molested a victim was admissible as an alternative explanation for a victim's injuries. So in this case, the prosecution argues that Richard Allen, acting alone, which they didn't before, and I think that's been well beyond proven, up until they just magically decided recently that Richard Allen is acted alone. I'd love to know what part of their investigation from the time Richard Allen was arrested and they were trying to keep the probable cause affidavit sealed, did they determine, and how did they go about determining that there were no other actors? However, the evidence from the location where the bodies were found strongly suggests that more than one person was responsible for these murders. Former Indiana State Police Detective Kevin Murphy testified that it was always the belief of law enforcement that there were between 2 and 6 people involved in the murders. If the prosecution's argument is that Richard Allen acted alone and there are alternative theories that the murders were committed by more than one person, then who are the additional people involved in killing Abby and Libby? Who are the people that the defense originally, or that the prosecution and the investigators originally thought were involved? Who did they think the 2 to 6 people were, and what did they do about it? The answer is that there are third-party suspects who have not been charged and who have no ties to Richard Allen. So this leads to the conclusion that Richard Allen is innocent and that other individuals acting together killed Abigail and Liberty. So did the investigators have particular persons of interest that they were like, we think that these guys are involved? And then they pull up the, Richard Allen tip, and they're like, okay, this guy's involved too. So let's figure out how Richard Allen is connected to these particular people, right? And then they couldn't. So they were like, well, we have this evidence that says Richard Allen is involved, and we don't have this other evidence saying that our other suspects are involved. So let's just go to one. Or are there still the law enforcement agencies, or not agencies, the law enforcement officers outside of the Murphy clique, and now Ferenczi, rest in peace? Are there other investigators who still believe that, like a Purdy, who was doing like these off the book interviews with Brad Holder looking into Odinism still? Hi, Sleuth Intuition. Thanks for being here. So did they change their mind just based on the fact that they did not have anything tying these other suspects to Richard Allen? Hey, Kiki. So Dr. Don Perlmutter is the director of Symbol Intelligence Group and an adjunct professor of forensic medicine at the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, and who trains federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies. She's testified that the murders were committed by individuals with ties to racist Odinism, sometimes also known as Asatru. Odinism and Asatru are polytheistic ideologies involving the worship of Nordic pagan gods, including Odin and Thor and Loki, which they didn't put that one in there. These ideologies are nature-based ideologies, and their rituals generally take place outdoors, incorporate natural elements, and are typically performed near natural bodies of water. Both ideologies incorporate the use of runes, which are marks of mysterious or magical powers. Runes take on additional magical powers when charged by blood, or when 2 or more single runes are coupled together to create a bind rune. Both ideologies also incorporate quote-unquote magical thinking. Dr. Perlmutter further testified that while Odinists have general shared symbols, such as Odin's hammer, as they splinter off and form different kindreds, they often develop their own symbol and rituals. Social media has been a large part of this development, as it allows the individual access to a wide range of interpretations, symbols, and ideas relating to Asatru and to Odinism. Dr. Perlmutter testified that the murders of Abigail and Liberty meet all of the elements of a ritualistic killing and was a quote-unquote textbook ritualistic killing. The elements include: 1. The location of the crime. She testified that Odinism and Asatru are nature-based ideologies. These murders took place outdoors in a clearing in a wooded area near a body of water. She testified that in Odinism and Asatru, clearings can be the location of a sacred circle where rituals and sacrifices take place. She further testified that it is important that the murders took place near a body of water, as water is often used for the purification prior to the rituals and the sacrifices. Number 2, the date of death. She testified that often rituals and sacrifices take place on important dates. She testified that I'm going to say this wrong and I apologize, the Valisblot is a sacrificial feast day honoring Odin's son Valis. This began at sundown on February 13th and ends at sunup on February 14th. Liberty German and Abigail Williams disappeared on February 13, 2017, and were found on February 14, 2017. Number 3, cause of death. Dr. Perlmutter testified that ritualistic crimes are most often committed by sharp force injury to the neck, and that slitting the throat is indicative of a sacrifice and an initiation ritual. Both girls were killed in this manner. So they did add in the autopsies. Number 4, the murder weapon. She testified that ritualistic crimes are often committed with ceremonial knives. The weapon used to kill the girls was a knife. Number 5, the symbols at a crime scene. She testified that in ritualistic killings, symbols including runes are often left at the scene. In this instance, there is what can be interpreted as a Laguz rune. Where's Adrian? Is she in here? Hold on, I have to call. Both girls were killed with a sharp with a sharp instrument. From my understanding, obviously, I don't want to get too far into this, but Libby obviously had more severe wounds across her neck than Abby did. Okay, you're here, so you'll be able to tell what all this stuff is in chat when I'm like, I don't have a clue. Okay, there you go. See, and means water. Okay, interesting. Yeah, it was where I think it just comes down to the weapon. That's the only thing I'm thinking. Ticking time bomb. Oh, for real? Hi, Diamond Eyes. Hi, Dina. Like a high testosterone. I wonder. Adrian, would that tie into something like that? A water like semen. Okay, I gotcha. Ugh. Ugh. Okay. So the Laguz rune, painted or transferred to a tree with Libby German's blood. This tree is located near the area where the girls' bodies were ultimately found, on the edge of the clearing. Additionally, Dr. Perlmutter testified that the sticks and branches laid on the bodies appeared deliberately and intentionally placed in particular arrangements which would have meaning to the individuals committing the crime. Special agent from the FBI, Nicole Robertson, testified that when she was searching the home of Ron Logan, she was looking for evidence of runes and anything Nordic due to the placement of the sticks on the girls' bodies. The emails between the FBI and the state police superintendent, Doug Carter, all provide evidence of the belief by law enforcement that the evidence left behind at the crime scene, including sticks found on the girls, supported the possibility that the killers were Norse paganists. Number 6, the body disposition. She testified that in ritualistic killings, bodies are often moved and positioned in a fashion that is not a counter-forensic measure. In other words, that the bodies are moved and positioned in a manner not consistent with someone who is trying to conceal the bodies. So, like almost like a message, like they're put that way on purpose and not trying to hide them. She further testified that the bodies are often positioned to include the arrangement of natural objects. In paragraph 6 of her affidavit for probable cause for search warrant for the home of Ron Logan, FBI Special Agent Nicole Robertson testified that it was her belief that Libby and Abby's bodies had been moved and staged. Major Cicero of the LaPorte County Sheriff's Department also testified at the hearing that Liberty German's body was dragged around the crime scene and that Abby's was moved from side to side. Additionally, it is evident from the crime scene photo identified as Exhibit FF that sticks and branches were deliberately and intentionally arranged on the bodies. Major Cicero testified that the sticks and branches maybe covered 3% of the girls' bodies. He further testified that there were many leaves and sticks in the area which could have been used to conceal the bodies if that was the intent of the killers. Number 7, an atypical blood pattern. Finally, she testified that there is often atypical blood patterns identified in ritualistic killings. She identified the blood pattern on Libby's face as an atypical blood pattern. This abnormal blood pattern on Libby's face was also identified by Major Cicero. Mr. Allen has a constitutional right pursuant to the 6th and 14th Amendments of the United States Constitution and the Indiana Constitution to present evidence describing the area where the bodies were found, the manner in which they were found, and to provide an explanation for said descriptions. He further has the right to prevent evidence flowing therefrom that the individuals who killed Abby and Liberty were followers of Asatru and Odinism, and that the murders were part of a ritualistic sacrifice. The 6th and 14th Amendments of the Constitution and the Articles in the Indiana Constitution protect Richard Allen's right to challenge the manner, quality, and thoroughness of the investigation, to inquire about law enforcement's failure to consider third-party suspects, and to present evidence of a biased investigation. Mr. Allen has a fundamental right under the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment and the Confrontation Clause of the 6th Amendment of the United States Constitution and Section 13 of the Indiana Constitution to call law enforcement officers as witnesses and to cross-examine them on third-party suspects, as the failure to properly investigate or consider third-party suspects undermines the thoroughness of their investigation. The fact that an investigator may have discounted a viable fact or suspect makes it more probable the investigation was flawed and that Mr. Allen is innocent, thus meeting the requirements of relevancy under Indiana Rules of Evidence 401 and 402. Mr. Allen has a fundamental right to impeach the credibility of and present the bias of any witness, including law enforcement. Quote, a witness's bias, prejudice, or ulterior motives are always relevant at trial in that they may discredit her or affect the weight of her testimony. And that's from Stan Holt versus State. It has been well established that law enforcement, like all humans, can suffer from confirmation bias and tunnel vision. In other words, a detective or officer may search for and interpret evidence in a manner that confirms his or her existing beliefs. In this matter, Mr. Allen's evidence is that law enforcement failed to properly investigate third-party suspects and failed to consider alternative theories to their timeline. In this case, members of Unified Command failed to follow up on leads and investigations of the Assistant Police Chief Todd Click and Indiana State Police Detective Kevin Murphy, such as the failure to perform an extraction of Brad Holder's phone, the failure to investigate the alibi of Patrick Westfall or Elvis Fields, and the failure to seek warrants to search the homes of those individuals. Unified Command did not consider any fact that did not fall into their timeline that the girls were murdered between 2:14 and 3:30 p.m. on February 13, 2017. Unified Command failed to investigate why Liberty German's cell suddenly connected to the cell phone tower at 4:33 a.m. on February 14th, after not connecting to the tower from 5:44 p.m. the day before on February 13th. On February 14th, until 4:33 on February 14th, Indiana State Police Detective Jerry Holman testified that there was no evidence that Richard Allen returned to the location where the bodies were found after 3:30 p.m. Smooth intuition, I just started crying. Ruckus made me read it all by myself. I did turn his on because I thought he was going to be, I was like, oh, Ruckus is going to read the doc? Sweet. And then I was like, is my volume not working? What's going on here? And then it just keeps going, and I'm like, wait a minute, Ruckus, wait a minute. So Indiana State Jerry Holman testified that there was no evidence that Richard Allen returned to the location where the bodies were found after 3:30 p.m. on February 13th. Something happened at 4:33 a.m. on February 14th that caused Libby German's cell phone to suddenly connect to the cell tower, and it is logical to believe that whatever caused the phone to connect was the result of actions taken by third-party suspects. This evidence goes to the very heart of thoroughness of the investigation into the deaths of Abby and Libby. Mr. Allen's constitutional rights require that this evidence be admitted. So the Sixth Amendment to the United States Constitution and Article 1 of the Indiana Constitution protect Richard Allen's right to present evidence that someone else could have committed the crime. Evidence is relevant when it has a tendency to make the existence of any fact that is of consequence to the determination of the action more probable or less probable than it would be without the evidence. So, quote, evidence which tends to show that someone else omitted the crime, logically, that might be a typo, logically makes it less probable that the defendant committed the crime, and thus meets the definition of relevance in Rule 401. Remember, Rule 401 is what Nick is trying to use to keep this out. So they're countering all with their case law of everything that supports this coming in with Rule 401 and 402. So it's just counteracting what he's saying in his motion to eliminate. In order for a defendant to admit evidence that a third party is responsible for the crime, the defendant must show some connection between the third party and the crime. Here's your nexus that we hear so much about. When the state excludes competent, reliable evidence that is central to the defendant's case, his constitutional right to present evidence is abridged. Indiana courts have found the following evidence to be competent and reliable evidence central to the accused defense that someone else did it. For instance, the defense provided a reconstruction of the crime. But in Allen versus State, the defense provided a reconstruction of the crime and testimony that another person made statements linking himself rather than the defendant to the murders, which should have been admitted. So that's from Allen versus State. That's interesting. In Joyner versus State, evidence that a married man was having an affair with the victim, worked at the same place as the victim. The defendant had sexual relations with the victim the night before the murder, lied to his wife about his whereabouts, had an argument with the victim on the last day she was seen alive, and had lied on his time card at work the day after the murder was admissible. Okay. Evidence in this is in Rohr versus State now, evidence that a prior beating of a child victim by mother, not defendant, caused victims extensive injuries was admissible. So just a whole bunch of case, like here, why all this stuff was admissible under this case law. Evidence and Cookie versus State, evidence of a newspaper article with a picture of a person wanted in connection with burglaries in the area and who resembled the defendant was admissible. Okay, here's just a bunch of case law on why it all should be admissible. Okay, so understanding that evidence of third-party suspects is relevant, the question then turns to the standard the court must utilize in determining whether the third-party evidence is admissible. As the Indiana Court of Appeals has stated, to be admissible in a criminal prosecution, evidence that a third party has committed the crime with which the defendant is charged need not show substantial proof of a probability that the third person has committed the act. It need only be capable of raising a reasonable doubt of the defendant's guilt. While a criminal defendant may present an alternative perpetrator evidence at trial in order to cast doubt on the defendant's guilt, the defendant must first lay an evidentiary foundation to establish that the alternative perpetrator evidence has an inherent tendency to connect the alternative perpetrator to the actual commission of the charged crime. Well, she's going into big detail on this nexus that we've talked about before. Here, Mr. Allen's evidence of third-party suspects falls well within the category of a competent, reliable evidence central to his defense that he is innocent and that other people committed the murders. Mr. Allen's evidence has an inherent tendency to connect the third-party suspects to the commission of the crime. So here she's going to go into, I keep saying it's she because I'm telling you, I think this is Ajay that wrote this. It's her style. So here's your nexus that she's going to present in this supplemental document. For Brad Holder. Brad Holder is the father of Logan Holder, who was Abigail Williams' boyfriend at the time of the murders. Law enforcement identified Brad Holder as a suspect by February 17th, 2017. We talked about yesterday, the tip about Brad Holder was number like 40, it was 48 on the 16th. So 3 days after bodies were discovered, law enforcement received several tips that Brad Holder was the man in the video found on Liberty German's cell phone, purportedly taken at the south end of the Monon High Bridge at 2:13 p.m. on February 13th, and that he was involved in the murders. So multiple tips saying Brad Holder was bridge guy, essentially. In his first interview with law enforcement on February 17th, Brad Holder told officers that he had never met Abby. In his second interview with law enforcement on August 30th, 2023, that's interesting. That is not his second interview. That would be his third, because we know that he had the other one with Purdy and the female detective. But I guess since it wasn't an official interview, I guess maybe they're not counting it. In his second interview with law enforcement on August 30th, 2023, Brad Holder claimed that he had difficulty remembering which girl that Logan dated, despite the fact the girl Logan dated had been involved in a high-profile murder case. In his second interview, not to mention I'm just going to put this out there real quick, not to mention his son on Facebook actually had her name with her date of death. So that's kind of a weird, doesn't remember it, but okay. In the second interview, Holder now remembered that he had supervised one date between Logan and Abby. Brad Holder then told a third different story as to how many times he had met Abby when he was deposed on May 2nd of 2024. In his deposition, Holder claimed he had met Abigail twice, including once at third-party suspect Pat Westfall's house. I don't think Patrick Westfall would want them giving him a nickname of Pat. They'd be like, no, we're not. He's going to be like, we're not on a first name. Like, we're not on a nickname basis here. It is also important to note that Pat Westfall never admitted to the police that Abigail Williams had been to his house. Richard Allen has a right to have the jury consider the following about Brad Holder's second statement on August 30th, 2023, and whether his second statement and his deposition 9 months later both providing different accounts of Holder's interactions with Abby, tend to show that he is a third-party suspect. Whether Holder lied in his first interview back in February of 2017 to inoculate himself against being a suspect by denying having met Abby, this is inconsistent with his statement in August 2023 when he said he met her once, and with his deposition in 2024 where he says he met her twice. The validity or lack of validity of Brad Holder's initial claim that he had never met Abby in his February 2017 interview, 3 days after they were murdered, but then somehow was able to remember 6 years later when interviewed on August 30th of 2023 that he had in fact met Abigail at least one time. The likelihood that in 2023 Brad Holder would not know which of the murdered girls his son dated following the media coverage from this high-profile case, or whether his claim to not remember which girl his son dated was simply another attempt at Brad Holder to feign ignorance of his knowledge of Abigail Williams to throw law enforcement off his scent as a suspect. Number 4, the likelihood that Holder's ever-changing stories of meeting Abigail Williams, including the last story that he'd met her twice, once being at Pat Westfall's house, is indicative of a man who can't keep his stories straight and only changes his stories because he is unaware of law enforcement evidence of those meetings, causing Holder to step closer to the truth with every account he tells. Number 5, why would Pat Westfall choose to not tell law enforcement that Abby Williams had been to his house, as Brad Holder claimed in his deposition? And does such omission show that Westfall was concerned about being connected to Abby Williams? In the course of the investigation, law enforcement found that Brad Holder posted many pictures of runes on Facebook and discussed their symbolism and magical powers. His Facebook posts indicate he believes in the magical power of runes. Even more revealing are Brad Holder's own words in which he admits that runes hold magical properties. Brad Holder liked a post describing an outdoor sacrifice with a rune painted in human blood on a tree. He liked a post describing an outdoor sacrifice with a rune painted in human blood on a tree. Brad Holder also posted a picture on Facebook depicting a scene eerily similar to that of the bodies when they were found. He intentionally inscribed a temporary tattoo on his hand in a pattern similar to the sticks and branches placed on Abby Williams. Even retired Indiana State Police Detective Kevin Murphy admitted that the sticks placed on Abigail Williams' body matched the temporary tattoo that Brad Holder inked on his hand just a few weeks after the girls were murdered. Furthermore, Holder painted and then posted a picture of Odin's sacrifice in which the Norse pagan god Odin is hanging upside down and one leg is bent in such a manner that his foot is resting against his calf. The position of Odin's legs in Brad Holder's painting is almost exactly the same position in which the killer placed Abby Williams. Brad Holder believes in the power of magic and blood as it relates to magic. This is evidenced by his Facebook posts, as well as Amber Holder's testimony that Brad Holder intentionally cut his hand and allowed the blood to drip on his Odin altar. Amber Holder testified that Brad Holder took her hand and cut her hand to drip the blood onto the altar. Major Pat Cicero testified that the marking found on the tree near the bodies was transferred to the tree with Libby German's blood. Perlmutter and Dr. Perlmutter and Major Cicero testified that the marking on the tree appeared to be an upside-down L. She testified to that too? She testified? Dr. Perlmutter testified that the thing on the tree appeared to be an upside-down L? Okay, I didn't hear that part, I guess. Dr. Perlmutter testified that this resembles the rune Lagus. Dr. Perlmutter testified that the runes charged by blood carry additional importance and magical powers, and that the blood is the highest offering to the gods. The Norse pagan ritual videotaped by Brad Holder in Fort Wayne clearly showed Pat Westfall using his hand to mark the tree in some fashion similar to the Facebook post referenced earlier, which was marked with human blood and which Brad Holder liked. Now, we know that Patrick Westfall did an interview on Sleuth Intuition where he said he was not marking the tree. He was actually taking something and sticking it into the tree to keep it like as his offering or whatnot. I'd have to go back and remember his exact terminology, but he was not marking something on it, he was placing something in it. Now, we don't know one way or the other, but either way. Brad Holder testified that one of the times he met Abigail Williams took place at the home of third-party suspect Patrick Westfall. Amber Holder, Brad Holder's ex-wife, testified that Brad Holder told her that Patrick Westfall and his crew murdered Abigail Williams and Liberty German. Richard Allen has a 6th and 14th Amendment right to present the jury these facts and to argue that Brad Holder was pointing the finger at Patrick Westfall to either A, insulate himself as a suspect by implicating Pat Westfall, or B, that Patrick Westfall, who had no real alibi, actually killed the girls, and Brad Holder knew it and wanted someone to know in the event that he, Holder, was ever accused of the murders. Or C, that Westfall, acting in concert with Brad Holder, had the girls abducted while Holder was at work awaiting Holder's arrival in Delphi later, at which time they killed the girls. These facts and arguments, along with the knowledge that both Holder and Westfall were Norse paganists, and the belief of law enforcement and expert witnesses that the crime scene was filled with Norse pagan elements, all tend to show Brad Holder and Patrick Westfall killed Abigail Williams and Liberty German, and therefore this evidence should be presented to the jury. Consistent with the low bar required to honor a defendant's constitutional right to present third-party suspect evidence, Amber Holder's August 1st, 2024 testimony exhibits an inference that Brad Holder and Patrick Westfall were involved in the murders. Amber Holder testified that she is Brad Holder's ex-wife, and that Brad Holder confided in her that he and Patrick Westfall had a falling out over something that happened in the woods near a river involving blood. Furthermore, Amber Holder testified that Brad Holder confided to her that Patrick Westfall and his crew killed the girls because of Westfall's belief that Abigail Williams' mom was a race traitor. Dr. Perlmutter also testified that individuals adhering to the white nationalist version of Odinism would kill others because of the belief that someone was a race traitor. Furthermore, Amber testified that Brad Holder told her that Westfall wanted to move on from animal sacrifices to human sacrifices, and that this was the real source of the falling out between Holder and Westfall in his deposition. In his deposition, Holder denied ever making any of these statements to Amber Holder. Ooh. Brad Holder's denial of uttering those statements to Amber makes Holder's statements subject to impeachment at trial. Brad Holder's alibi is in question because of 4:33 a.m. phone activity. Detective Jerry Holman testified that Brad Holder had an alibi as he left work at 2:45 p.m. on February 13, 2017, and was 40 minutes away from the Moan on High Bridge. First Sergeant Chris Cecil of the Indiana State Police testified that, I think I keep calling him Cicero. I think I keep mixing them up. So it's Chris Cecil of the Indiana State Police testified that the phone ultimately found under Abby Williams' body did not receive any messages from 4:06 p.m. on February 13th until 4:33 a.m. on February 14th. This suggests that Libby German's cell phone was not connected to a cell tower at the time. Okay. Law enforcement's claim is that the phone had remained under Libby German's body from around 3:30 p.m. Okay, hold on. Let me go back here. Law enforcement's claim is that the phone had remained under Libby German's body from around 3:30 p.m. on February 13th until it was found around noon on February 14th. However, cutting against that theory is the fact that a police report references Sergeant Mitchell Blotcher's belief that the phone, as of around 10 p.m. on February 13th, 2017, was either no longer in working condition or it was not in the area. We know from Chris Cecil that the phone was in working order because it connected to the cell tower at 4:33 a.m. on February 14th, 2017. Therefore, the police report supports the fact that the phone was out of the area for a period of time. So it's interesting because in the probable cause it does state, remember we had heard originally that the phone was under Libby. So they actually went back. I mean, that's They did. They went back to, it's not even in the same place. She doesn't address that here, at least not yet. But says a race traitor is a person who supports attitudes or positions that are against the interest or well-being of their own race. Anybody was not knowing what a race traitor was. Okay, so let me go back here for just a second because I want to kind of get this timeline and I want to understand it. So the last message comes through at 4:06. 4:06 p.m. is the last message that comes through. The phone last is pinged in the area at 5:40. Where was that at? 5:44. I think that's what it said. Okay, so from 4:06 to 5:44, nothing comes through. But then all of a sudden at 4:33 a.m., at least 15 messages. Why wasn't anybody messaging her anymore after 4:06? We don't know about calling, right? Because we know that the phone doesn't have any activity after 5:44. It's not pinging in that tower. But this one only states messages. So is there missed calls? Is there missed calls? Hold on real quick, you guys. Okay, yeah, that's it. That's interesting. So they just, I mean, so even at 5:44, like people just stopped calling her? You'd think if there was a bunch of missed calls that the state would have presented that. This is actually very interesting to me. Where is any other messages or phone calls? Nobody's calling them anymore? I know that there's an interview with Becky Patty where she states that she doesn't know how many times that she had called, but she does know that the phone had started to go to voicemail. I'm going to have to go find that and see and get the exact quote of what she says. But there is something to, like, there's something about that. So that if the phone is going directly to voicemail, most likely the phone is not on, or the phone is dead, right? I mean, it's not on. Hold on one second, you guys. So the phone was either off or out of cell tower range, and that is a spotty area generally speaking, especially in 2017. But if the phone is put under whatever girl you want, like Nick says it was Libby, but then we now are pretty clear it's Abby. So if the phone is put underneath one of the girls at 3:30 in the afternoon, it's still, I mean, it's okay. This is my question, I guess. If I'm standing in the same place, and I have cell service, right? So her phone is in the same place since 3:30. At least we know, what was it, 3? I have the time, 3:32, I believe it was, where it stops moving. No, that's 2. It's 2:32. Never mind. We'll take that out. So let's say the phone stops moving at 3:30. We'll go back to that. 3:30, but it still has messages from 4:06. The phone hasn't moved. So why would it receive a message at 4:06 if it doesn't? How does it lose reception but doesn't move? Hmm. Like it just goes up and down. So you're standing or sitting in the exact same place, and you're losing and gaining reception as you're standing and right there. Okay. You guys all know I'm not the big tech person. Does straight to voicemail mean that the phone wouldn't have rung? That's why I said I'm going to go back and find that interview. I'll go back and find that interview, and so we can get the quote of what she says, because I don't want to miss it. I don't want to put it out there and it be inaccurate, but it's something like that. Hey, Stephen, RL put the phone under a shoe and under the leg to get it to lose reception because he didn't know how to turn it off. But then how does it automatically gain reception at 4:33 in the morning? Okay, thank you, Shibby. Look at you. Look at your memory. Might not be popular, but I watched The Irish Guy, and he showed a road and a camping spot and suggested girls move 9 miles and phone turned back on when girls moved back to scene. I think that we all can agree that the girls were killed there. We just don't know when the girls were killed there. I mean, based on what we've heard about the blood at the crime scene, I mean, I guess I should probably clarify that. I think we can tell that Libby was killed there. And I believe probably both girls. That doesn't mean they didn't take them and bring them back. I'm not saying that. I mean, this does take us back to, you guys remember there was the Facebook post, and I never got any like clarification on it, but there was that Facebook post about the girls who said they called 911 because they had heard screaming coming from that area, and that the cops said that they were busy and couldn't come at that time. You guys remember that? We can all agree. Dream on. Mike Patty said the phone was pinging all over town. But from my understanding, there was only 2 towers. So, I mean, I don't know. That doesn't really make a lot of sense either. So, I mean, are they taken, brought back? So if we think about that, so, you know, and Sleuthy and I have talked about this too, of I think the phone is turned back on, and I think this goes with Sleuthy too. The Down the Hill podcast mentioned a 2 a.m. ping. Do they mention the ping, or I haven't listened to that for a little while. Okay, let me go back to what I was saying, and then I'll go back to Sleuth's comment. So we've talked about that. If the scene is this, we know the scene is staged and the girls are posed. We know that to be the case. I think most can agree with that at this point. I don't know, once again, if that is that a general consensus. Like, that's where I'm kind of at. I don't know. Maybe people don't agree with that. Maybe people just think it is. But we think like they turned it on. They turned the phone back on purpose because they were done and ready for the girls to be found. And it has been stated that they're posed as a message, and this is just a conjecture, so take it for what it is, that the girls were posed like as a message to the town, or a message to somebody in particular in the town, and that was what the staging was for. So they would want the girls to be found with this message on them. Hi, Julie. And so turning the phone back on when they know they're done and they're about to leave, so the girls can be, you know, like all of a sudden they'll start getting, you know, the phone will start pinging again and somebody can come and find them. So that is my thought. I have never been of the big belief that the girls left. I'm becoming more curious about that now, simply because well, and once again, I'm not a tech person, but there's something going on at 4:33 in the morning. Somebody needs to give me a really good explanation of how this phone just starts coming back up. It's very risky, though. Okay, Jamie. So Stephen Curry's in chat. I'm going to throw this out there. Is it risky if you know you're allowed to be there at 4:30 in the morning? Like, is it risky if you know the people, the property that you're on? Is it risky then? Okay, so if you want to be devil's advocate, and I still got to go back to sleuths real quick, but so the biggest hole in the defense's third-party theory, why would you take them off the site and then bring them back? Are there not 1,000 acres of other ritual places in the woods? I've thought about this, and that was my thought originally. But now that I'm looking at it this way, I'm gonna throw this scenario at you. If the girls are posed and staged as a message to somebody in the city or town or the town itself, why would you want to stage them and pose them somewhere else when you know this is the place that the people are looking for them because this is where they went missing? You want them found. You need the message to be seen. Because I was always with you. I was always like, that's just dumb. Why, if you're going to take the girls, why would you ever bring them back there? I'm totally on that same page. Okay, so back to the 2 a.m. ping. This was always a big thing, but there's the fire chief who's standing. There's an interview where he's standing outside of the front of the fire department, and he's saying that the 2 a.m. or it was actually, I think it was close to 2 a.m., right around there, that is when Tobe called him and said, hey, we got the last ping from the girl's phone, and it's at the bridge, and we want to go back and start searching. So I think that people thought the phone pinged at 2 a.m., but in reality, it was the call from Tobe to the fire chief saying, hey, we finally got the last ping from the 544, and it was at the bridge. Yeah, when my phone dies, it's dead. Is it risky if you can say you're searching? Okay, so well, there's also, I've always found this part very weird. You know, Pat Brown was always a big player in the people who found the girls. You know, he was in one of these groups, which I've kind of stated, like, I think these groups kind of submerged upon the area altogether, all finding them. So like there's an initial person who sees them, and then all the ones that are in this area all come over. So they all can say, like, we found them, even if they're not necessarily the first one. But Pat Brown was not an actual searcher. He wasn't like signed in to search. But Pat Brown was really good friends with Ron Logan. So was it like, if we want the girls found, do we send out somebody and be like, you should go look over there and see what you find? All right, I'm just reading some comments. Tobe was the one that called off the search around midnight. We don't believe the girls are in danger. Yeah, they just thought somebody had fallen, possibly hurt. Where's the DNA, the footprints, the fingerprints found in a normal crime scene? Well, it's also interesting because if you follow a lot of true crime, people who use knives typically cut themselves. It's like one of the most common things, and they say, like, you know, use a knife, you cut yourself, you leave your DNA. But we have like 2 big cases right now where that's not necessarily the case. But how does an amateur person go about not leaving anything? Not leaving anything. There was something about them taking the boots from the Packers plant. There was something about Pat's keys. It had to do with that his truck was parked in the cemetery, and they had to have his wife. They got a hold of his wife to get the keys, but I've heard there were footprints, says Peggy. Well, there was also, they do this in a few cases, so this isn't Delphi in particular, but the initial press conferences where the law enforcement says they don't believe that anybody else is in danger, and I'm like, how the fuck do you know that? Like, how can you possibly know that nobody else is in danger when you didn't even think these girls were in danger? I don't know if it's just a lie to the public to, stop chaos, or do they know, hey, well, you're not in danger because this was some ritualistic crime and the dates are over, so you're not in danger anymore. I know that's a reach, and I'm going to put that out there. I know that's a reach, but I'm just saying at this point, I'm just like, what in the world? This is. Cheek says, I think the phone just found a signal. Don't think anyone turned it on. But isn't it weird that it lost signal then from 5:44 until 4:33? It didn't gain signal at all in that time? All right, we're going to keep reading. I think this is probably so far the most interesting part of this whole thing, is just kind of trying to figure out this little timeline. But so he also brings, or she, I think it's, like I said, I think it's Ajay that wrote this, brings up the fact that Brad Holder has this alibi at 2:44, right? But, or 2:45, whatever it is, that he leaves work at 2:45. So if that's the case, and they're waiting until later, let's just play that out, because to me it's kind of confusing, because at the beginning of this entire thing, they actually state that the tips that were coming in say that Bridge Guy is Brad Holder. Well, that's, if they're going to say his alibi is sealed, and that, where they're going to go with the timeline and the time of death, then there's an issue with the fact that Brad Holder obviously is not Bridge Guy, because the video is at 2:13. And video is found on the phone, right? So then if Brad Holder is not Bridge Guy, which I don't think Brad Holder is Bridge Guy, so I'm just going to put that out there as my opinion. I don't think he is. Who is Bridge Guy? If it's true that the phone was in or under a shoe and under a body, possibly wet, don't you think there's a possibility it could have just not had signal? I would say yes, if it goes along with the timing. I would say yes to your question. I do think it's possible. So that if the phone stops getting signal because they've gone through the creek and it got wet and it's placed under the body at about 3:30, then there shouldn't be any signal from that point on if we go with that theory, right? It's placed in the shoe, it's placed, or under the shoe, under the body, possibly wet at 3:30 p.m. How does it still have signal 5:44? That would be my biggest question there then. If the signal stopped at 3:30, that would make perfect sense to me. Yeah, bg.bh. Hi, Gwenin. Good to see you. So, Johnny, don't forget, ladies, there was other voices on the recording. We have no idea how many people was there. Well, if you go back to the very beginning, they, oh my gosh, who was it? Who did that Indiana Roadshow interview? Was it Mullen? No, it wasn't Mullen. Who was that guy? Did the Indiana Roadshow interview, and he stated, we can't even be sure that the voice saying guys is the same as the person saying down the hill, or can we be sure that the person who said down the hill is the killer? That was one of the very first road shows right after the murders. Okay. All right, let's keep going. Did I read here yet? No, I've talked so much I don't even know where I was. We know from Chris Sissel that the phone was in working order because it connected to the cell tower at 4:33 a.m. Therefore, the police report supports the fact that the phone was out of the area for a period of time. Okay, we read that. In further support that the phone was out of the area, we have not read this, correct? Yeah. Okay, so let's keep going. Hey, Thomas. Hey, Skeptic. At this point, I would not be surprised if the phone was taken and manipulated, then returned. I watched a lady take a hot mic moment. Oh, hi, Kel. Take a hot mic moment from the Karen Reed trial, and she isolated different voices. I wonder if she could do that for the Down the Hill recording. I mean, they gave this recording to supposedly everybody and their mother to do what they could with it. The FBI had it. Supposedly Disney had it. NASA had it. I mean, somebody should have figured it out. Okay, so in further support that the phone was out of the area is the fact that from 5:44 p.m. on February 13th, 2017 until 4:33 a.m. on February 14th, the phone in question did not connect to the tower in spite of law enforcement's claim that the phone had never moved under Libby German's body from roughly 3:30 p.m. on February 13th until the girls were found around noon on February 14th. Libby's phone received no messages from 4:06 p.m. on the 13th until it suddenly received 15 messages at 4:33 on February 14th. It defies all logic that the 15 individuals suddenly sent messages to Libby's phone at 4:33 in the morning when she had been missing for over 14 hours. When Libby German's phone once again connected with the tower, as Chris Cecil finally admitted during his testimony, all those messages awaiting Libby's phone to connect to a tower finally matriculated onto Libby's phone at 4:33 a.m. Now I feel like we're reading something from Baldwin. It gets very repetitive right here. The simple explanation is that someone who was at the scene turned on that phone at 4:33 a.m., causing the phone to connect to the tower once again at 4:33 a.m. Jerry Holman testified that in law enforcement's theory of events, Richard Allen never returned to the crime scene after he left around 3:30 p.m. Okay, well, it doesn't take 27 minutes to walk from the crime scene to the CPS building where supposedly Sarah Carboss sees him walking, muddy, bloody, just muddy, blue tan jacket. So that's also interesting. If they believe, which David Erskine said in his text messages from the get-go, that he was told they believed everything was over. Everything was over before 3 or by 3:30. Therefore, who could have been at the scene at 4:33 a.m. to turn the phone on? If Abby Williams and Liberty German were killed around 4:33 a.m. on February 14th, Brad Holder's alibi for 3:30 p.m. on February 13th, 2017 is meaningless, as is his alleged alibi that he was at a workout gym around 2 a.m. on February 14th, the only time he ever went to the gym at 2 a.m. These phone issues are a major problem for the prosecution's contention that Richard Allen acted alone and had left the area where the bodies were found by 3:30 on February 13, 2017, and certainly provide the minimum nexus, along with the other individual details herein, required to clear the hurdle that allows third-party suspect evidence at trial. Now we're going to talk about Patrick Westfall. So Brad Holder is connected with other suspects in this case. One of those suspects is Patrick Westfall. Patrick Westfall was at home near the Monon High Bridge on February 13th, 2017 with his son, Nick. Patrick Westfall interview from August 27th, 2023. There is no proof of Westfall's whereabouts on February 13th other than his statement. To date, law enforcement has provided no concrete evidence of Westfall's whereabouts on February 13th. Brad Holder and Patrick Westfall knew each other from an army deployment in Afghanistan. Patrick Westfall and Brad Holder practiced asatru. Patrick Westfall's interview on August 27, 2023, there were members of a small kindred, which is a group of people who believe in asatru and who gather to hold meetings and worship the gods. Patrick Westfall is a priest or holy man in the asatru religion and hosted kindreds at his home in Delphi on Sundays. Brad Holder attended those meetings. Holder and Westfall attended a pagan ritual videotaped by Brad Holder in 2016 in Fort Wayne, Indiana, which was entered into evidence. Near the end of the video, Patrick Westfall appears to be marking the tree with his hand. Major Cicero testified that a tree at the scene was marked with the blood of Libby German. Dr. Perlmutter testified that the mark was in the form of a rune. Cicero admitted that whoever sliced Libby's throat could have Libby German's blood on their hands. The forensic pathologist who conducted the autopsy admitted that upon slicing Libby's neck, the amount of blood and the force of that blood exiting Libby's neck upon slicing it would have been very powerful. Okay, so this is the pathologist. But the blood squirting as far as 4 to 6 feet, no problem. This isn't a deposition of the medical examiner or the forensic pathologist. Therefore, the jury could conclude that upon slicing her neck, the blood forcefully covered the killer's hand, who then used that blood to mark the tree. Okay, so just a footnote here. This deposition was not included during the evidentiary presentation and therefore is being provided via first class mail as an exhibit for this court to consider. Okay. Patrick Westfall told police that he had sacrificed a chicken by cutting off its head. Dr. Perlmutter testified that sacrifices are almost always carried out by slitting the throat of the animal or the person being sacrificed, and furthermore, that practitioners of these religions often begin with animal sacrifices. As mentioned earlier, Amber Holder testified that Brad Holder stated that Patrick Westfall wanted to elevate from animal sacrifices to human sacrifices. Furthermore, Patrick Westfall acknowledges that asatru worship takes place in a clearing in the forest. This is consistent with Dr. Perlmutter's testimony that rituals will occur in open spaces in the forest. Both victims in this case were found in a clearing in the forest. This creates an inference that Patrick Westfall was involved in the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German, and that they were sacrificed in an asatru Norse pagan ritual. I don't know why they repeat all this stuff about the girls, though. I don't like that. Hold 1 second. So now we're going to go to Elvis Fields, a Rushville, Indiana resident, is a suspect in this case who was investigated by law enforcement. There is no doubt that Elvis Fields knew of the existence of Brad Holder. He admitted as much in his deposition. Additionally, Detective Kevin Murphy testified that Brad Holder can be linked to Elvis Fields through Facebook posts, and that Elvis Fields' Facebook posts mimicked those of Brad Holder. Elvis Fields testified in his deposition that Brad Holder frequently mimicked his Facebook posts. Elvis Fields testified in his deposition that Brad Holder frequently mimicked his Facebook posts when he posted pictures. That doesn't make sense. Testified in his deposition that Brad Holder frequently mimicked his Facebook posts when he posted pictures of knives, brass knuckles, sticks in the woods, and other items. That's got to be, there's something wrong with that. That doesn't make sense. Elvis Fields is testifying that Brad Holder mimics him? Yeah, that's how you hear that too, right? I'm like, wait a minute. It is a logical conclusion that Brad Holder knew Elvis Fields in some manner if he was mimicking Elvis Fields' Facebook posts. I thought this was always opposite. I thought Elvis was the one who was copying Brad. It would be exceedingly rare for a stranger to follow someone's post, and even rarer to mimic them, especially when both were suspects in the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. Former Rushville Assistant Police Chief Todd Click testified that Elvis Fields was a suspect or accomplice in the murders and that he was interviewed several times by law enforcement. After one such interview in which law enforcement collected a buccal swab from Elvis Fields, Detective Kevin Murphy drove Elvis home. Murphy testified that after Elvis got out of his car, he returned and asked Detective Murphy if his spit was found on one of the girls, but he could explain it away, would he still be in trouble? Elvis Fields lived in Rushville. He testified that he was at home in Rushville on February 13th. He denied ever being in Delphi. If he spits on one of the girls, this places him in Delphi at or around the time of the murders. Elvis Fields' statement is admissible pursuant to IRE 803, then existing mental, emotional, or physical condition. Under this rule, a statement of the declarant's then existing state of mind, such as motive, design, intent, or plan, or emotional, sensory, or physical condition, such as mental, feeling, pain, or bodily health, is admissible as an exception to the hearsay rule. Elvis Fields' statement is clearly indicative of a guilty state of mind and indicates he has a mental feeling of anxiousness over his conduct and possible ramifications. Additionally, Elvis Fields denied making said statement to Detective Murphy. It is expected that Elvis will continue to deny asking the question at trial, thus making it proper impeachment evidence. This statement is also impeachment evidence contradicting Elvis Fields' statement that he was never in Delphi. Okay, that kind of makes sense. He's like, I wasn't copying Brad. Brad copied me. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. Finally, Elvis Fields' question to Detective Murphy was precisely that, a question. Hearsay is a statement that one is not made by the declarant while testifying at the trial or hearing, and two, is offered in evidence to prove the truth of the matter asserted under IRE 801. A statement is a person's oral assertion, written assertion, or nonverbal conduct if the person intended it as an assertion. The hearsay rule does not bar commands, requests, or questions. That's interesting. I don't know if that's a loophole kind of thing or what, but she's stating this in a couple different cases, that the hearsay rule does not bar commands, requests, or questions. Rod Abrams is a friend of Elvis Fields. In his statement to police, Rod Abrams testified stated that at the time of the murders, Ned Smith drove a white pickup truck. And that also sometimes Elvis Fields drove a white pickup truck. Tina Garrison saw a white truck parked at the old CPS building near the Monon High Bridge at approximately 4:20 p.m. on the day of the murders. This Tina Garrison report was tendered near the end of the day as an exhibit on August 1st. I remember that. So, I don't know if you guys remember this for those of you who followed the case for a very long time, you remember that they always, there was always this story of that there was a work vehicle that was parked near the CPS building. They would not tell the public like what kind of work vehicle. It was always just a work vehicle. Now, this white pickup truck becomes interesting because remember we had the whole white van situation before? And then I have to go back and look at a couple things here. There was a witness that drove by, and I'm playing this out of memory right this second because I need to go back and look, but maybe somebody in chat will remember what the heck I'm talking about. There was a lady that drove by. She says that she saw particular cars parked there. One was the car with the paper plates. And there was another vehicle there that she saw. It was just somebody who was driving by. So there we have the exterminator who was there too. So that's Brad Heath, who stated that he saw a vehicle parked on the side of the road close to the CPS building, but it was actually on 300 North, but parked off the side of the road, and that he says he saw this vehicle there all day. So I'm TC comment. Okay, hold on. There was a couple arguing at the bridge. They weren't arguing. She had a brand new white truck. Is that Daniel's girlfriend? Is that Pearson's girlfriend? The arguing, I think, ended up taking on like a thing of its own about the whole like a whole cheating, and then there was also something that changed where it was like under the bridge, but then we find out that it wasn't them that was actually under the bridge arguing. I don't know. That's a whole different live. Hey, Carrie. Oh, thank you. Thank you for the gifted memberships. Welcome, new members. Woo woo. Yeah, that's Brad Heath. He's the exterminator. He's also in let me see if I can bring it up real quick. No, I don't want to, because I'm going to keep reading this. We'll keep this one about this. We can do a discussion on, we'll do a different live on the discussion around some of this stuff, because there's a couple things after reading this, I definitely want to pull up and get some clarification on. There are 3 white cars, 2 had paper plates. I don't remember that. I didn't remember 2 having paper plates. Hold on real quick, you guys. Okay. Let me see. Parked crooked offside road between CPS and side gravel walk. Yep. I know. That's why I said I'm going to go back to reading. We'll do a different live where we can dissect some of the info, and we can pull up some matching things that we can go through and just see where we're at with it. So let's just keep reading it. Rod Abrams testified that at the time of the murders, we already read this. So this Tina Garrison report was tendered near the end of the day as an exhibit on August 1st. Given that both Elvis Fields and his friend Ned Smith drove white pickup trucks, this potentially places them in Delphi near the scene of the murders on February 13th, 2017. Detective Murphy also testified that an analysis of Elvis Fields' cell phone records established that Elvis Fields used his phone often throughout a typical day. And strikingly, Murphy testified that on February 13th, Elvis did not use his phone between 10:30 a.m. and 7:30 p.m. All of the above is documented in Todd Click and Detective Kevin Murphy's reports. Statements made in a police report are not hearsay when offered to show the simple fact that the statements were made rather than for the truth of the matter asserted. So holding that report made to DCS by the accused was offered. This is a case law, Heiser versus State. The report was not hearsay, blah, blah, blah. Okay. State investigative reports are admissible when offered by the accused in a criminal case. Okay. Finally, the fact that Elvis's friends, Rod Abrams and Ned Smith, could not keep their story straight concerning their whereabouts with Elvis Fields on February 13th is also in. Hold on. Yeah, tiny human alert. Okay, so could not keep their story straight concerning their whereabouts with Elvis Fields on February 13th is also important. According to Todd Click and Detective Kevin Murphy, Abrams told different stories as to his whereabouts with Elvis on February 13th. In one story, Abrams claims that he, Elvis Fields, and Ned Smith were all in a Muncie hospital visiting a friend on February 13th. In his interview in 2018, Abrams admitted having his phone with him while in Muncie on February 13th. However, when pressed whether his phone's pings would verify that he was in Muncie at the time, Abrams stated that the hospital equipment would likely block his phone's location. During his deposition, Abrams testified that he did not believe he even owned a phone in 2017, which is a different story than he told a few years earlier. While Abrams and Smith claim that Elvis was with them in Muncie on February 13th, Elvis Fields denies that he even ever left Rushville on that day. Yet again, Murphy testified that Elvis Fields' phone records show that the man who constantly used his phone on any given day, for some reason, did not use his phone between roughly 10:30 a.m. and 7:30, that's got to be p.m. because we already had this, 7:30 p.m. on February 13th for a period of 9 hours. By Google Maps, it is roughly a 2-hour drive from Delphi to Rushville, giving Elvis plenty of time to leave his phone in Rushville, drive or be driven in a white pickup truck to Delphi to participate in the murders, and then return to Rushville. I'm going to counter this defense team. If participate in the murders wouldn't quite make sense if you think the murders happened after 7:30 p.m. But maybe participate in the taking of the girls? I don't know. I mean, would that be considered participating in the murders? Maybe, if you knew the intent. These changed and inconsistent stories related to Elvis Fields' alibi, as well as to the Elvis's phone activity for February 13th, provide further inferences of connections between Elvis and the murders and other third-party suspects. Furthermore, while Johnny Messer admits to knowing Elvis Fields, Rod Abrams, and Ned Smith, that is not the story that Elvis Fields and Rod Abrams told police. Both Elvis and Rod deny knowing Johnny Messer. These points were made in documents provided to the court, along with notes that pointed to the specific pages or timestamps on those items. These inconsistencies and denials provide evidence that the parties can't keep their stories straight on something as basic as whether they know each other. These discrepancies could certainly be viewed by a jury as attempts by guilty parties to hide their connections in order to deceive law enforcement. The inconsistencies and discrepancies concerning their alibis and whether they even know each other are examples of things the jury should hear concerning third-party suspects. These discrepancies, combined with Elvis Fields' clear connection with Brad Holder through Facebook and Elvis's incriminating question to Murphy, support Richard Allen's 6th and 14th Amendment rights to pursue these third-party suspects. Now we're going to talk about Johnny Messer. As a former Rushville resident, is also a suspect in this case who connects the Logansport Delphi crew of Brad Holder and Patrick Westfall to the Rushville crew of Elvis Fields, Rod Abrams, and Ned Smith in Rushville. There are pictures on social media of Brad Holder, Patrick Westfall, and Johnny Messer together at an Odinist gathering. That photo was admitted into evidence on August 1st, and both Kevin Murphy and Todd Click testified as to the connection between Brad Holder, Patrick Westfall, and Johnny Messer. Murphy and Click testified that Holder, Westfall, Messer were all associated with the Vinlanders Social Club, hereinafter the Vinlanders, a club for quote-unquote Europeans, as explained by Patrick Westfall. Johnny Messer was a probate with the Vinlanders. Murphy and Todd Click testified that the Vinlanders engaged in Asatru-based practices, worshipped gods such as Odin and Thor, and were Odinists. Johnny Messer confirmed that most members of the Vinlanders were into Odinism. Patrick Westfall and Johnny Messer traveled to Minnesota together for a Vinlander event. Johnny Messer's uncle is Billy Messer. Elvis Fields previously lived with Johnny Messer's uncle in Rushville, Indiana. However, one of the most important aspects of the Johnny Messer evidence is Messer's role as a recruiter in the Vinlanders. According to former Rushville Assistant Police Chief Todd Click, Messer denied recruiting members for the Vinlanders. However, Click also testified that he had interviewed multiple men who admitted that Messer had recruited them to join the Vinlanders. Messer's denial of being a recruiter for the Vinlanders, juxtaposed against Click's investigation revealing that Messer was in fact actually trying to recruit members for the Vinlanders, would indicate that Messer felt he had something to hide. What could that be? The obvious answer would be Messer was the recruiter that hooked Elvis Fields up with Brad Holder. After all, Messer knew both Holder and Fields. Although Fields denied knowing Messer, the fact that Messer's former girlfriend, Taylor Hornaday, told Kevin Murphy that around Valentine's in 2017 that Messer was, quote-unquote, up there visiting his Vinlander friends, Westfall and Holder, and that a red substance she believed was blood was found on the car he drove, quote-unquote, up there, provides additional connectivity between all these parties and the murders, and that Richard Allen has a constitutional right for the jury to hear of these connections. Okay, now we're going to get into Keegan Klein and Tony Klein. All right, I'm going to take a drink. I need a drink. Okay. So Keegan Klein is the son of Jerry Anthony Klein, who goes by Tony. He was 22 years old in February 2017. And he and Jerry Anthony Klein resided in Peru, Indiana in February 2017. Detective Vito testified that Keegan Klein was communicating with Libby using a fake Snapchat account under the name of Anthony Schatz in the days leading up to and on February 13th. The content of those messages is unknown. He further testified that Keegan Klein admitted to driving to Delphi, Indiana with his father, Tony Klein, on February 13th, and that Keegan Klein waited in the vehicle while Tony Klein went to the woods in the area where the Abigail Williams and Abby and Libby's bodies were ultimately found. Vito testified that Keegan Klein stated that when Tony Klein returned to the vehicle, he had blood on him. Roland Purdy further testified that Keegan Klein admitted that they discarded a knife in a river when they were driving home. All of this evidence creates an inference that Keegan and Tony Klein murdered Abigail and Liberty German. Yeah, I mean, Keegan Klein says they essentially did, but I don't know. Then you got Tony Klein being bridge guy. Then I don't know, and I think that we're all pretty clear on the fact that Keegan Klein's a fucking liar. So. Yeah, explains the $1 million Wabash search for sure. Okay, so now Ron Logan. Where's Steven? I'm sure he likes this part of it. The bodies of Abigail Williams and Liberty German were located on February 14, 2017 on the property of Ron Logan. According to Special Agent Nicole Robertson, Ron Logan lied to law enforcement about his whereabouts on February 13th. Ron Logan's physical build is consistent with that of the individual in the video captured by Libby's iPhone on February 13th, and his voice is consistent with that of the voice on the audio. Much like the facts in Allen, the evidence that third parties killed the girls in this matter is exculpatory, unique, and critical to Mr. Allen's defense. The crime scene, including many findings that the killers practiced acetru and that it was a ritualistic crime scene, to be exculpatory evidence must clear or tend to clear Mr. Allen of alleged fault or guilt. And simply put, if someone else committed the crimes, Richard Allen did not. Richard Allen has zero ties to Asatru, Odinism, or the Vinlander Social Club, unlike Brad Holder, Patrick Westfall, or Johnny Messer. The above evidence is exculpatory, unique, and critical to Mr. Allen's defense. The above evidence that the state wants to hide from the finder of fact is admissible for two reasons. One, it demonstrates the lack of investigation and failures with the investigation. And two, the fact of a distinct possibility, if not high probability, that people other than Richard Allen killed Abby and Libby. Richard Allen has a right to introduce evidence of motive as it is always relevant. Evidence of motive is always relevant in criminal prosecution, according to Ross versus State, Davis versus State, blah, 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 blah. In the context of third-party motive evidence, an accused must show some connection between the third party and the crime before the evidence is admissible. This is all going back to the Nexus. In this case, the prosecution has no proof of any connection of Mr. Allen to Abigail Williams or Liberty German, nor have they identified any motive as to why Mr. Allen would kill them. There's absolutely no evidence as to Mr. Allen's motive to commit the crime. What does exist, however, is motive on the part of Patrick Westfall, Brad Holder, and others to kill Abby and Libby. Brad Holder knew Abby Williams as his son was dating her at the time of the murders, and he had supervised them on at least 2 dates. Patrick Westfall participated in animal sacrifices. Asatru sacrifices are carried out in order to provide the offender with power through runes, blood and binding runes, all of which are present at the location where the bodies were found. This provides motive for Brad Holder and Patrick Westfall to murder Abigail Williams and Liberty German as part of an Asatru Odinist sacrifice. Wherefore, the reasons identified above, Richard Allen by counsel respectfully requests the court deny the prosecution's motion in limine as it relates to Odinism, cult, ritualistic, killing, Brad Holder, Patrick Westfall, Johnny Messer, Elvis Fields, Ned Smith, Rod Abram, Keegan Klein, Tony Klein, or Ron Logan, and for all other just and proper relief in the premises. Respectfully, here's your certification. There she is, Miss Auger. And then here's all the cases. I mean, there's a lot of case law to put in here. So, all right. Hey, Aries. All right, let me see. I'm just reading through. Yeah, don't mention Arl was at the bridge and next to the bodies in the evening. Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't actually throw that in there, too. I think KK is important because it was essentially a false confession. Yeah, that's true, too. It is. It shows that, here you go. Here's somebody just saying that they did something they didn't do just for funsies, for whatever reason. Well, I think that was the big thing that Click wrote in his letter to Nick was like, hey, like, I don't understand. Like, I have more evidence so far against, these guys than you do in this PCA. So, like, somebody needs to help me understand why you guys would arrest Richard Allen and not arrest these guys. Hey, Giselle. Touché, Auger. I tried getting a free RA or a free Rick for my Indiana plates when I renewed last month, but they were already taken. You can change your plates every year. That's nice. He admitted apparently to, they put in here 2, but I mean, I think that the point of adding the second one was he would be supervising the second one if he took the kids, if he took Logan and Abby to Patrick Westfall's. In his interview in 2023, he states that he supervised them on one of their quote-unquote dates. I don't know how much dating there, I mean, I don't know, there's hanging out. I don't know what that means. She did a good job. There's a couple of spots that I'm like, okay, did somebody else infiltrate and start typing stuff for her? Because it got a little repetitive in the middle, but Richard Allen spoke of gun knowledge while in the bar playing pool. He got brought into a plan where he carries out the downhill spot. He books it, others take over. Oh, so you think that he is bridge guy. That's interesting. Hey VJBC. Thought he needed a walk. Down the hill was Ron Logan, but it doesn't mean he did it. I'm just reading your guys' comments, seeing what you guys think. They have to allow the Odin stuff in. If they don't, this isn't America. The jury has a right to hear the evidence, and they need phone experts. Well, for me, I mean, it's a pretty clear. The defense's nexus is legit that the law enforcement was investigating these people and stopped. I mean, that's a pretty damn good nexus just on its own. I would think, but I mean, they are all connected. I mean, whether it be, firsthand or not. Has Gould rolled on this? If she did it while I was live. Oh, you know what? I think, Annie, okay, so let's talk about this for a minute, because you might be thinking with the Franks. So this information is obviously very fluid throughout all four of the Franks motions. 1, 2, 3, 4. All four of the Franks have been denied. The Franks motions were put together in order to suppress evidence from the search warrant of Richard Allen's home. So the legality behind those documents kind of goes to, it's like, we'll say like those are all part of X. Now, getting third-party culprit or perpetrator into the trial and creating this nexus, we'll call that all Y. So some of the information is similar, but it's put into a different category for different legal purposes. So this is, hey, according to 6th and 14th Amendments, we as his defense attorneys are allowed to present this evidence in front of a jury. And this is the case law on why we should be allowed to do that. So yes, some of the same info. We also got a little bit of new info and interesting info that we'll have to keep digging into and see what we come up with. But it's like you might use chicken to make, like chicken cacciatore, but you can also just barbecue the chicken. So it's still chicken, but it's for two different purposes. The third-party defense has a threshold they need to meet. It will be up to the judge. According to McClellan, the nexus is direct DNA evidence, which they don't have for Richard Allen. Right. Thanks, Shibby. I got sidetracked a couple times with some of the info. I'm like, hey, wait a minute. Okay, so how do you know that's... Oh, Susie Q. Okay, that's not to me. What did Carrie say? Oh, they have those already. How about the airplane mode on until they were ready for it to ping and receive messages? So, honestly, I know I repeat myself with this, but like tech stuff is not my forte. So I don't ever want to come on here and pretend like it is, because I don't want to like just give bad info. I don't know if that would alter how like them trying to ping the phone. I don't know if that would matter, just because I don't know. I obviously airplane mode. I've been on an airplane. I've turned my phone into airplane mode, and yeah, when I turn it back on, all the text messages come through. So that would make sense to me. But I don't know the logistics of how and what has to be with the phone when they are doing that. Hey, Joe Schmo, thank you. You guys just got 5 new memberships. Thank you. He was supposed to take a load of hogs up to Michigan on the 13th, but didn't make it until the 14th. Yes, that's Chrisman. Chrisman, is that his name? I think that's his name, Chrisman. Josh Chrisman? Oh shit! Now I'm not even sure if that's his name, but that's what's coming to my mind. Hey, Liberty Justice. BH talked to a few questions about what LE said to him. Is that what you're talking about from Fire and Ice? Or is this something different, Liberty Justice? I don't know. That's the only thing I kind of know of, was that somebody there had talked to him. But they said that he kind of seemed like he was just trolling. He didn't even seem to want to answer the questions or wasn't giving straight answers. Hi, Carla. Okay, I have a question. It may have been answered, but if photo and voice recording is separate, how does one know if the photo is even the man that did this? They're going to have to show how they got to that conclusion, because I'm telling you, at the beginning of the case, they legit said that they did not know if the person was the same person. They didn't even know if the person saying all the things was the same person. So, I mean, obviously, whatever conclusions they came to based on their investigation, that would be, that's what the defense is going to try to get them to. Like, how did you go from thinking this was 6 people to thinking it was Rick Allen alone? Like, what made you get there? You know? Judge Jessica, what did you say up here? Maybe I missed what you said. I'm scrolling up so I can see what the other comment was. Oh, the hog driver that showed up a day late to his drop-off. Well, we never really heard when he left. Like, we heard the 13th and arrived on the 14th, but like when on the 13th did he leave? Like, if he checked out at like 8 a.m. and then doesn't arrive, to a location that he's supposed to be at, 8 hours away. I don't know exactly how far it was away. When he doesn't arrive there until like nighttime on the 14th or afternoon on the 14th, that might be strange. But if he leaves, let's say he has a late load and he's driving overnight, and a lot of truckers will drive overnight, especially on short trips. So does he leave at like 10 and then he gets there the morning, at 6 a.m. and now that's the 13th and the 14th? I don't know. I'd like more info on that whole thing. Thank you, Shibby. Aw, that'll make me blush. Hi, Kaleidohope. Oh, you were? Yeah, I realized that. No, I'm like, where was that? Let's talk about it. Carrie, I was just in the kitchen and could hear my TV from there. My daughter walked in just as T said my name. My daughter had a look on her face and looked at me and said, why is YouTube talking to you? Because we love your mom. What's up, Zero Cool? Chrisman had a girlfriend in Lafayette. He stopped there often, 20 minutes south of Delphi. I stated in my opinion, here in Canada, many people admitted to luring victims to Robert Pickton. Oh, I remember that name. All opinions are welcome, Susie, for sure. Did I miss something? Or your opinion is absolutely welcome. Left the morning of the 13th and didn't make it to town close to Augieland, Michigan until the 14th. Ah, so he did leave the morning of the 13th. And he has poofy hair. Who has poofy hair? Josh Chrisman? Josh Chrisman is also somebody who was at these Odin, these rallies or Odinism events or Vinlander events. So he's listed in that as being an Odinist as well. He may have been forced to rest. She says, you need friends that can see you. We're like super cool here with our not being able to see each other friendships. Did you? Did it end up in my spam? I found a whole bunch of email in my spam the other day. If they were killed, somebody had to hear them screaming, fighting for their lives. Well, we have to also remember you have Cheyenne, who is at the south side of the bridge at the time that they would be stating that the girls would be killed. That's part of the prosecution timeline, that Cheyenne and her friend would be at the south side of the bridge. Like, I've obviously not been there. I couldn't tell you how many feet that is. I could measure it on a map, but yeah, talk about, there's people literally standing there at the time that these girls are supposedly being killed. Also, an interesting side fact is they don't see anybody walking down 300 North. Hi, Delphi dummies. Saying no defensive wounds or fighting back, however she worded it. I read that he delivers hogs to Newer Hog Place by Girls Ball Field. Yeah, it's like right across the street. Shibby, YouTube like follows you and there's like, The question is, how many missed calls did they get? Yep, how many missed calls? And are there any missed calls between the 544, or is this just a text message thing? Are there missed calls after the 406 last message? Jennifer, do you think that the south side or the north side? Jerome Weiss's girlfriend heard screams. Is she the one that put it on Facebook? As a God thing, I think after they altered the BG video and had their narrative they needed, the phone was put back on to locate the bodies. I'm very curious about this whole phone thing, and was it turned back on? If you're into details, you need to listen to All Eyes on Delphi live show from earlier today featuring DB. I was listening to it, and then I had to take care of mom stuff, so I have to go back and finish it. But I don't know. I told you guys this yesterday. All Eyes' brain is like a beautiful mind. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know how more people aren't subscribed to her channel that follow Delphi, because I'm telling you, that channel is, her brain is just the way she interprets information and thinks about it and puts it together. I love it. The south side, over by where the private drive's at, you know. Okay, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Was it Mike Patty who said that he had called? I thought it was Becky Patty who said that she remembers that it went to voicemail. Maybe they both said it. So supposedly, according to the person who posted the information about the screams in the middle of the night that they posted on Facebook, we have nothing to show that they actually called them. We don't know anything about it as of right now besides this Facebook post. She says they did. They called the cops, and the cops were like, we're dealing with other things like tips or leads or whatever right now, and we'll get over there as soon as we can. I don't know. That seems really fucking weird to me. If you heard girls screaming near that area where you're looking for them, wouldn't that be important to get over there to? Cecil was in the middle of preparing reports from a brand new forensic extraction of Libby's phone. It was supposed to be ready for 8-1 hearing, but there were formatting issues. Yeah, they said that they're going to still have to depose him after that report. Was one of the things that they were pissed off about, was like, we could have just waited to depose him, but nobody bothered to tell us that they were doing this other, dump. Which is also interesting because they would have already been in trial. So the whole theory behind that everybody was ready to go to trial, it looks like they're still doing investigations after trial would have already started, 1 in January and then 2 in May. Like I said, I don't know anything else about it besides this weird Facebook post where somebody says that happened. We don't, as the public, have anything from law enforcement or even the defense team stating that that is even an accurate thing. Or is it just somebody on Facebook who wants to say something because they want to say something on Facebook? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Okay, radar. Here we go. I heard the scanner. The lady that called repeated screams. The lady that called repped screams. The dispatcher called cars and they said to ask her to let know if she hears anything more. A few minutes later, she repeats the call again. Radar, that's interesting. So do you remember anything about them dispatching cars to the area where this call was coming from? Joe Schmo, formatting issues equals Mullins. Wasn't smart enough to digital. I don't understand how the pic of Abby was not on the phone or that the phone pinged at the school. You and me both, but Snapchat is weird in itself. So I know there's things about like being able to, once again, not a tech person, being able to upload photos to Snapchat versus taking photos on Snapchat, and maybe that has something to do with it. If you look at the two photos, I mean, the filters are different. So does that have something to do with it? And then I don't understand the whole video thing. Telling you right now, I don't know enough about it to understand why a video on a phone would, with longitude and latitude, start off at the high school, but then end at the bridge. But it's only a 43-second video, so I don't understand any of that. It makes no sense to me. The screams were just people calling for the girls. That's interesting. Covering up, or your opinion on, do I think that the police are covering up? I think everything that we're seeing right now is them covering their own bullshit investigation. That's where I think this is a tough thing for me, because I think there's obviously, I don't think many, no matter which side of the fence you sit on, can question that there's a ton of mistakes that were made. There's a ton of shit that's wrong with the investigation itself. What the cops are trying to do is to say all those mistakes happened, but they don't have anything to do with Richard Allen, so they're not important. Because everything to do with Richard Allen is, perfect, according to the investigators. We did everything right when it came to Richard Allen, but we just screwed up things before that. So they're trying to push all that stuff under the rug. So then if the jury only hears about the investigation into Richard Allen and they think they did a great job with that, then that's what the jury will think too. They won't go back to thinking anything about all the mistakes that were made. Well, the defense is like, hey, you guys fuck up means that you continuously fuck up, and we should pay attention to your fuck ups because you probably fucked up in this investigation into Richard Allen. We shouldn't just sweep it all under the rug and act like it didn't exist. I'm not sold on that there's a cover up, as in a setup. I'm not sold on that yet. That they took all this evidence and switched it around and planted anything. I don't necessarily think that. I'm almost more of a incompetent. I believe there's incompetence versus actual. I think the corruption is to cover up the incompetence, if that makes sense. And people are like, well, if you have a conspiracy theory, or if you have a conspiracy, then you need all these people have to be involved in it. And and then we're going to wrap this up so I can go cook dinner. But I'm just going to say, you do not need all of these people. You do not need all of these people to be involved in the conspiracy. You could have one person who does something, and if it is changing out evidence, or if it is just lying on a police report, or it is a whatever, all you need is that person to be trustworthy to all these other people, and whatever they did to change the course of the investigation, then therefore all these other honest people are just following suit to this person that they trust. And you only need this one person to be involved in the conspiracy. And I'll give you a made-up example. This is very made up. Let's say that you have Lesenby, who's crap, I'm best friends with these guys, and I'm an Odinist. This is made up. I just clarifying. Made up story. I'm best friends with all of these guys, and I don't want them to get in trouble. I know it was them. So all I have to do is, change this piece of evidence if that's what it is, or all I have to do is bury this report or delete this interview, and I can do any of those things. Everybody trusts me. I'm Tobe Lesenby, the sheriff of Carroll County. So now everybody who falls in line under him and is told what to do or how to go about the investigation, when Purdy asks his commanding officers, hey, what about this Odinism stuff? I mean, Becky Patty's telling me to look at Brad Holder because he's Odinist, and you've got this Purdue report, and these sticks, they look like Odin, and Holman's like, no, it's not Odin. It's not Odin. We already cleared him. We cleared Brad Holder. Tobe Lesenby took care of it. Once again, made up story. Clarifying right now, this is a made up story. So, now everybody who falls in line underneath Holman and then underneath Purdy, they don't have to be part of the conspiracy. They're told what to do. I'm hoping that makes sense. Like, it could be 2 people, it could be 3 people, it could be 1 person who's just fucking shit up, and everybody is falling in line. And there's something in my gut that tells me it's very strange that Purdy was interviewing Brad Holder later in 2017 after being told by his superior officers that Brad Holder was cleared and that Odinism wasn't involved based on the Purdue report. Why in the world is Purdy talking to Brad Holder? And then his excuse for talking to him is because he wanted to know more about Odinism. Why? If you supposedly were told everything is done. And then why do we have this FBI task force consisting of ISP officers and so on looking into this Vinlanders gang, domestic terrorism essentially, looking into them to see what connection they have to this crime? So it's like anybody who went about investigating this particular situation either did it off the books or was shut down when the information was passed to Unified Command. That's weird to me. That's what makes me go, wait a minute. Are we looking at the right guy or not? This is where I sit on a fence at and go, okay, I can see if we just go, Occam's razor, simplest answer is normally the right answer. They typically have the evidence, they put it together. But then it's like, why do we have all this other stuff? You have ISP. ISP is Kevin Murphy, who's working on a task force, an FBI task force. And people aren't listening to him, and they're shutting down his theories and his information, and they're shutting down his requests for search warrants, where he gets the search warrant and they don't actually follow through with it. Why? And why is it only about this? I don't know. So that's where I stand. So, like, do I want to sit here and go, yay, I think that there's Odinistic cult people who want to kill children because they think their parents are race traitors? Like, do I think that? Like, no, obviously, like, I don't want to live in a world like that. So it's really easy to go, that's bullshit. And this whole magical thinking, magical thinking is what makes these runes, hold power, or these blood sacrifices and so on and so forth. And there's like a whole thing. I know there's people who like make fun of this magical thinking. And so my response is, if you know the scene is staged and you know that the girls were posed, what is the purpose of staging and posing them? If not to ensure this version of a magical thinking, even if it's not the same kind as Odinism. I have the House Variety. I've been listening to him for the first time. Oh, thank you for being here. The fuck up rant was hilarious just now, and you should clip it and use it in your intro. All right, let me see what you I started going through all that stuff and I stopped paying attention to what's going on in chat. Yeah, 2 to 6 people become 1. That's some fucking magical thinking right there. My comment was Teresa. Oh, sorry. But I appreciate hearing your debate. I think he was paid for the down the hill part and others took over. I think that's fair. I think that's a fair theory. There's no one that can prove that the unspent round allegedly found at the crime scene is the same one put in evidence and not switched out for a round cycled through Richard Allen's gun. If there's really no chain of evidence on that bullet, that'll be something very easy for them to prove that there is, and it'll also be something very easy for the defense to prove that there isn't then. And if there's no chain of custody on that bullet, they're going to have a major problem in the prosecution's office. Yeah, anybody who comes forward and questions anything. I mean, I have people who, and I get that you're talking about law enforcement, but I have people who have listened to me on other cases who are like not happy with my Delphi coverage, who think like, how could I possibly just not think he's the right guy? I have other people who listen to my Delphi coverage and are just like, how are you not there yet? Like, how are you still on the fence? And I'll say, it's shit like this 4:33 a.m. 15 text messages. I need people to, very intelligent tech people to explain to me both sides. So that's where I'm at. There's no way to prove the bullets actually was involved in the crime. So we've talked about this too. When it comes to that bullet, if it was truly 2 inches underground, there has to be some type of deterioration of the bullet or lack thereof that shows how long this unspent round was actually in the ground. And Mr. Steve from True Crime Web, if you guys aren't subscribed over there, he's a retired CSI, great guy, went through and did an entire study and buried a bunch of different rounds and types of rounds and made of different materials to see what the difference was over time and what they would look like. There has to be a way to prove that. There has to be a way to prove that if they found this round on the 14th, like they state that they did, then there has to be a way to prove that it could not have been there any longer than the day before. Yeah, see, I just like, I don't know what the hell to think, so I'm just like, why don't we all just put our heads together and figure it out? I think it comes to the ones that are just so set that they get pissed off at anybody who questions that their thought process has to be right. And I think I kind of gravitate to the ones that don't care about my thought process. Like, even whether people think he's guilty, people think that he's innocent, or people who are still on the fence like me, as long as they're just not assholes to me about how I feel, like I'm good. I have much respect. Do I say that a lot, Snappy Dragon? And that's where I'm at. Do I say that a lot? Oh, shit. Now I'm going to catch myself saying it. True Crime Web. Do I have any wrenches in here by chance? I don't know if I have any wrenches in here, but maybe somebody can drop it or I'll grab it. True Crime Web. He did an entire thing based on just me having that conversation. He's very good at. He does a whole bunch of I want to say recreations. That's not the right word. Like reconstructing different things to see what's possible and what isn't. There was a report about a man in a blue coat going in and out of the laundromat. The workers were calling, but every time cops arrived, he wasn't there. There was something weird about this freaking laundromat. I remember that, and I also remember when people were trying to say that there was something being washed there about the motorcycle cover. I don't remember too much about it at this point, but I remember those. All right, I think that's about it. And that's where I'm at, folks. That's where I'm at. And what's so frustrating is it won't be I know. That's absolutely ridiculous. This is too important of a case. It's followed by people all over the world. For them to not be able to see what actually happens in the courtroom is just an injustice to society, in my opinion. So I'm going to go cook dinner. Thank you again to Joe and to Carrie for gifting the memberships. Thank you guys for being here. about 2.5 hours. I will see you guys tomorrow. I don't know if we're going to do a Black Swan or if we're going to do a the Delphi live I originally had planned for today. So either way, I'll see you guys tomorrow, and we will catch up on something that we need to catch up on, because there's always stuff happening in the world. But from my heart to yours, like, thank you guys for being here. I appreciate each and every single one of you. As always, I know that you guys have thousands of other places you could spend your time, and you legit make a decision to spend your time here with me. And I just can't thank you enough. I mean, there wouldn't be anything without all of you. So go enjoy the rest of your Thursday. I'm sure I'll see you around the YouTube streets. I don't know who's live or who is going live. I have not been able to look at any of that yet, but I'm sure I'll see you around the streets, and I'll see you tomorrow on this channel. Have a good one.
Do you dare to follow me down? Head into the unknown, down the rabbit hole, where it stops, no one knows. We're going head into the unknown.